G'day and welcome to Inforunners. I'm Execute and joined today by Algared. How you doing, mate?
Fair, keeping out of trouble.
We both had kind of a crappy week this week, so we're a little bit late to the party on this one, recording a day later than we usually do. But we'd already done the notes the week before, so that's allowing us to get this one out rather quickly. So I'll talk about this real quick. Hashtag Jaden, if you're interested in winning F7A upgrade and a Super Hornet. Jaden unfortunately passed away, and his mate is wanting to find a new home for his F7A upgrade and Super Hornet. So yeah, hashtag Jaden in a comment and subscribe below, and for your chance to win that. So
that's right.
Today, we're going to be talking about the Caterpillar. This is our second Ship Scrutiny episode, with the last one being the Crucible, which people enjoyed. We had to do a part 2 because we forgot some stuff.
And unlike this is for me, this is a tough episode because Drake for me is like Origin for Execute.
Right.
So I'm not a fan of the Origin brand at all. But
not a fan of the Origin brand. Yeah, I agree. The Origin sucks.
I'm not a fan of a Drake. Well, to be honest, I'm not a fan of the Origin 100 or 600.
Right.
So I really hate those two.
See, Algared really has had a week because he's doing it backwards like I do sometimes.
That's
right.
That's
fine.
But I'm not a fan of the Drake brand. But having said that,
let's go over some simple little light highlights of the ship. For me, it is really one of the last really asymmetry ships in the game.
Asymmetrical.
Yep. That's the word. See, I'm not good with words. One of the last asymmetrical ships in the game. And one of the reasons
I would have said it was the first and really only asymmetrical ship we've got in game.
And I know other people argue that there is some light asymmetry, and there were ships like the Herald that I picked up and then got rid of because they got rid of the asymmetry. But the command module,
Sorry, go on.
The command module for this ship, though, is a real highlight of this ship for me. I think there's some really untapped potential. Like, you can use that. Like, if you pull up to a planet, you could possibly use that as your little scout ship to go down, your little shuttle, if you will. It also has all living amenities on it as well. So in a way, it's kind of like to me, you correct me if you think I'm wrong here, Algared, it's like a bigger Herald that holds 4 people, and it's got life amenities in it.
No, you're right. That the cab on the Caterpillar is basically a large Herald. It just doesn't have the computers for storing data, but it's got have for 4 people and life support for 4 people, and it's got its own weapons, and it's leave your ship in orbit and fly down to the planet and check things out, or take the whole thing down. So yeah, it's a highlight.
This ship has a lot of redundancy as well, with every module having its own components. So if one's blown off, it automatically has got redundant pieces, which I think is quite... The only other ship I think that's got as much redundancy as this is pretty much the Warden.
Yep. And don't underestimate that. Like, even though that redundancy in terms of components, for life support, is only for the cabs, that is really important if you've got living quarters, or people running around inside those areas. If one area loses its its atmosphere, or its systems been shut down, you can evacuate people out of those sections into another section, and it's going to be self-sufficient. And that's a huge bonus.
If we chuck the really cool tractor beam into the mix, and we'll come back to the tractor beam in a bit, but it may even allow you to swap those modules in space, because you'll be able to use the tractor beam to pull them around and swap. So unlike other ships that have to go back to somewhere to change over, you may be able to do it yourself. It is a smaller ship. I'm not saying you will be able to, but you possibly may be able to in the future. That's a big question mark.
And if you could, it'd certainly be a long, drawn-out process, I think.
So let's go back to the tractor beam too, because I think that is one thing for me specifically that really puts this ship, in my opinion... Now, when we did the tier list recently, I struggled with that tier list a lot, because to me that this ship is actually higher than the Hercules, in my opinion, right? if the only thing that separates this ship from the Hercules is the ability to transport a tank, then this ship wins. And I think by the end of this episode, you may potentially agree, because I would take the tractor beam over the ability to transport tanks, because you can suck in cargo from space. The Hercules can't do that. It literally is just an A to B transport vehicle. This is A to B, and one real big statistic that a lot of people don't know is, yes, the C2 has more cargo than this, but guess what? The M2 does not. So that puts this right between the C2 and M2, and I think that's something a lot of people gloss over, don't you, Algared?
And look, I think one of the things that I'm not sure where it came out in the tier list, but certainly one of the reasons you didn't push this up high, you didn't want to push this up high, is just because of the modules. We don't know what the modules. We know it's supposed to be modular, but we have no idea what the modules were really going to be. And because of that, you actually said, no, it's way down because of that. But
because there's too many unknowns. Even and there's a lot of this stuff that we'll go over today, and they are big question marks. How is this going to work? How is this going to work? And I would almost hazard, Algared, and you can correct me if you think I'm wrong, that there's a lot more unknowns with this ship than any other ship that I can think of, because of the modules being so up in the air.
Yeah. It functions perfectly as a transport ship at the moment, as a cargo ship, but it's still, even as a cargo ship, it's still missing the versatility of that tractor beam. Just imagine if you'd been doing the Xeno threat mission where you're collecting the cargo with a caterpillar, and you've got the sides open, and you're using the cat's tractor beam and pulling whole pallets out. Boom.
Yeah.
Boom. That would have been massive.
I think that tractor beam is really good cargo-wise, but you can clearly see why it's great for pirates. Just the ability to suck shit out of people's ship and chuck it into your own. This is going to be a real ship that's going to, like, you know how you see those the cutlasses going around killing people. This is what this was originally designed to do, was be the ship that they bring the cargo back to, and that is very evident when you look at the basic level design.
I think originally it was even more than that.
Yeah.
If you look at the jump point, you'll see that in the original design, Chris Roberts' brief was basically, this is the evil consort of the
evil freelancer. It wasn't it? Evil freelancer.
Oh, that's what they call it in the Matrix. But it was actually listed as kind of the evil consort of the Cutlass, the assault carrier. So it was literally the ship to take the troops to assault other ships. That was kind of the idea of this ship. So when you're thinking later on, and we're looking at some of the modules, you'll actually see how they tie into that idea.
We'll come back to this later too, but I think you would agree with me now. I was going to bring it up later, but I'll bring it up now. A lot of what this ship was originally earmarked for, I think, has been moved on to the Kraken too. I think this was meant to be like a mothership for Drake, but I now think that a lot of that's moved on to the Kraken.
Yeah,
we'll come back to that.
We'll see that in one of the modules when we're talking about that as well.
So the last little highlight thing we've got here is the side doors are not fully implemented yet. They are, so at the moment they kind of fold down, and that's all they do. But they're actually meant to fold down and then lower right down to the ground. And so once that's implemented, you should be able to fit vehicles in there, smaller vehicles like Cyclones and stuff like that. You won't be able to fit Tonks or Ballistas, but it'll definitely add to the versatility of this ship.
Yeah, and I think that, all of those aspects alone, even if it's just a cargo ship, even if it's just got cargo modules, still makes this a pretty impressive ship. And yes, I don't like Drake.
Yeah, so that's that. So what Algared and I are kind of saying here is that's the basic overview of how the ship is right now in game, and then we're about to add all this modular stuff onto it on top. But even at this level, I would still take this over a C2. I think the tractor beam puts it above the ability to transport tanks. And I think, just like this ship, there are going to be other ships with tractor beams. I think you are ridiculous if you think there are not going to be other ships that can transport tanks. I think
if you're looking at it against a C2, there are pros and cons for either, and I think you've got to take horses to courses, and this has a particular use. They can, both ships can land on the planet. Both ships can do a multitude of tasks. But this ship's not going to fly as
Let me
smoothly in
make it.
atmosphere as the C2.
Let me make it short and sweet then. The two things that the C2 has over this ship is it has three things. Slightly more cargo, VTOL, and it also has one extra large shield, where this only has one large shield, from what I remember reading. I could be wrong there. But, so yes, definitely it's got more defense, but this definitely has more versatility. And just like the new crappy Cyclones, the new Cyclone is more versatile, and that makes it better. So versatility is always a good thing. All right. Let's move on, because we've got a lot to go through here still yet. Let's move on to the middle modules first, Algared. So I'll let you kick it off with the first one.
So,
and tell people where we found this, Algared.
Or
do you want me to
remember which? We found it on a ship shape, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. So it was a very old video. They did 2 Caterpillar videos on the Star Citizen YouTube. I will have the second one, which is probably the more important one, but you can find the first one linked in the description below. I'll just do both. They'll be linked in the description below.
And I think they were both ship shape, weren't they?
They were, and they're about a year apart.
Yeah.
And you can see one that details out all the modules, and then you can see one as the ship's progressing, and you can see that they cut some things and stuff like that, and things chopped and changed. But watching both of them, there's some really big things in there just that we just had totally forgotten, and that's literally what we're going through now.
Yeah.
All right, so what was the first one, Algared?
Well, the first thing is the middle modules, and we say middle because the Caterpillar's got a back section, which is the engines and the area where the tractor beam is and where the cab attaches. Then you've got 4 basic cargo modules, and then you've got the front module.
Yeah.
So
but those cargo,
those
cargo modules might not just be cargo. So you shouldn't use. I call them middle modules. Sorry, I made that term up, and Algared hasn't kind of accepted.
So those 4 middle sections. They're the ones we're talking about at the moment. At the moment, they're just cargo, but in the ship shape, they talked about other variants, and probably the first one, and I'll do this one, is the armory and barracks sections. So, and I think that's relevant for what that original design brief of what the ship was.
It definitely leads itself towards piracy and boarding and stuff like that. Somewhere you can come back to with your cutlass and switch your whole loadout around. I'd also possibly expect, Algared, and you correct me if I'm wrong, knowing how things have evolved, the armory room might also hold suits. So you can change... think of it like a loadout change room. That's how I would... Like a change room. That's how I see it. So you change your gun, maybe restock some grenades or whatever, and possibly change your suit. But that may or may not be the case.
Maybe even the barracks section was that as well, with the beds and So
you
could imagine having an armory, 2 barracks, and a cargo.
So actually, they're separate modules, Algared. You had the armory and you had like a living quarters. So there were 2 that they had. So the armory to me is like a change room and stuff like that. The living quarters is more to add more people that can physically live on the ship. So not just the ship, because the ship has a small kitchen with 4 beds. So you can have that. Plus, you can have the 4 beds on the command module, so it's a total of 8 people by default. But then you can add more beds, so you can add even more people for a raiding or boarding action.
Sorry if I was
that's all right.
Misconfusing by saying armory and barracks. They were 2 separate modules. But both of those 2 modules, I thought, really go well with that idea of being that assault.
They do.
Assault ship, and I think those 2 really lend to that original design idea, which is why I think they're very important, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see those based on that.
I'm actually going to skip the next one just for a minute, Algared, because I think the other one that works with what you're talking about is in that assault boarding craft is the medical bay. I think that's really, really important. And I'd also start to say this is possibly the first one I'd start to put a question mark on. Knowing that the Apollo exists, would you also make a ship that's roughly in the same price and size range that has a medical bay? I think the other part you would say is it definitely doesn't have the same level of beds, though it's probably just the low-tier beds.
Yeah. Well, given that the Red came around the same, well before the Apollo, they brought out the Red that was the low-tier beds, and then you had the higher tier beds in the Hope. I could see that the thinking of this being the mid-tier beds when it came out.
Possibly. Yeah, I'll give
being
you
a
that.
bigger ship and that. But even on that, you got 4 midsection modules. You go an armory, so you got your armory, your weapons store. You got a barracks. You got a hospital. Man, that is a floating fortress.
And
that is an assault ship.
And that's why I started to question a lot of these choices, because like it seems too good to be true. And then when you put on top of when you know the Kraken exists, I really want it, but I just don't think it's going to appear.
Yeah, it's a bit like the impact of the Genesis Starliner. All the modules, all the different variants were originally said to be, and yet we've seen, basically the Hercules take a whole pile of the Starlifter side away from it. And the question is, how much of the original plan for this ship has been farmed off to even the Apollo or the Kraken?
I think people will definitely see by the end why this is the last ship I've held on to that is in my lower range of ships. I found it very difficult to part with because it is just so modular. And I know we didn't put this in the notes, Algared, but I would actually say, like, how you've got a really modular Endeavour, you've got the really modular Caterpillar, and then a Retaliator probably under this. This is probably going to be probably the most versatile of the most modular ships. And I think you've also got the Vanguard there a little bit, but I think the Vanguard's a lot less modular than those 3 that I just mentioned.
Of the 3 ships, you've got. It's hard because this is certainly not. It doesn't do the same things the Endeavour does.
Yep.
So even if you give it all the modularity it has, it doesn't do anything that the Endeavour does. It's got more of a crossover with the things the Retaliator has, but not the Endeavour.
I think we'll come back to this at the end, Algared.
Yeah.
I think because we're getting ahead of ourselves. So let's go back to the middle modules. The one that I skipped over is actually a store, right? And this is where we were going to talk about the Kraken, actually, because obviously you've got the Banu Merchantman and you've got the Kraken. The Kraken taking the capital slot, the Banu taking the large slot. This would then take the medium slot, and that would only leave a small ship that was required in the small slot. So you then actually have all 4 ships covered at those different sizes. Now, where Algared and I put big question marks up is, like, would people be happy with the medium slot ship being a module? And I put that question to you guys. You can let us know in the comments.
But the other way this works in, and it makes it's not a weird, totally out there idea. And you can see, I think CIG were even thinking that when it makes sense to have now put the privateer out.
Yep.
When the privateer came out, I know myself and a lot of other people said, you're ruining the BMM. You're taking the thunder from the BMM.
Yeah.
But I think more than that, you're taking the thunder from the Cat. Because the Cat also had the chop shop module as being an option. So you'd actually bring it, you could do salvage. You bring a ship in, chop it up, use your tractor beams to help you as you're chopping it up, bring it in, break it down, even repair it or whatever, put it into your shop, go into your workshop, fix it up, and then sell it in the store.
And like those first couple of modules where we talked about the boarding ship, you can actually see the chop shop, the tractor beam, and the store working together, because you can tractor in cargo to sell, you can tractor in salvage, chop it up, and sell that as well. So you can see that. So there's 2 ships very clearly there. You've got your kind of boarding ship, a cargo ship, or third variant I'll add is the cargo, and then the last one is that kind of salvage sell ship. And I can see them all working really well together. And you can custom and choose. So you can almost, like the Endeavour, where if you look at all the different module variants, you could have 4 or 5 different variants. You can clearly see there is at least 2 or 3 variants that work really well for this ship as well.
And I think that's a huge plus for this ship. But yeah. The last one of the middle modules, I think.
There's actually 2 left.
Yep.
The possible launch module or search and rescue module, which Algared thinks is very unrealistic, but I could actually see that working really well with that boarding ship module. that you were mentioning. The ability to shoot your people out to board a ship would be invaluable.
Flat on the hull,
Yeah,
which was actually raised in the video as well.
But now we have that the gravity gun thing. You could use that to slow yourself down, so that wouldn't be so much as a problem. And then pull yourself in.
Yeah, I still think it's a.
You just want people to get just the zerts that are trying to board you, Algared. You just want to.
No, I just think
the
idea. I just think the idea is dumb. It's just...
890 jumps and swipe them off your windshield like flies and splat it on the window. The last one that I think we'll both agree on, Algared, is probably the least likely to appear that was in the video, which is a docking collar module, which was literally just a module that had 4 docking collars on it, and they literally show 4 constellations docking to one caterpillar, like a meeting point. But I think this is all before space stations came along and all that stuff. I very unrealistically think people would go to a ship to meet like that anymore. I think they're far more likely to meet on one of the bigger ships like an 890 jump or on a space station. So I think that's probably the most likely to be cut of any of them. Would you disagree with that?
I think, in some ways. I think the key way that this was originally designed was that idea of the Cat being Drake's mothership.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that the Kraken came out is really why that won't happen. The Kraken is now the ship where the ships will meet. If they're out in the blue or out in the black trying to avoid contact, they'll go to the Kraken. Whereas originally it was the idea, this is the mothership, all the cutlasses or all the ships in the pirate fleet or whoever's there would go lock in, and then they'd, you've probably got the extra living quarters, so you could, those fighters could actually, the Buccaneers could dock on, the crew could actually rest, go back out and do stuff. So, but that's not needed anymore because you've got the Kraken. So,
I still think that there is a spot for this ship though to leave the Kraken and go out and be that support vehicle while out in the field. I still think I don't think you really want to take the Kraken into combat too much.
Oh, well, no.
But I think definitely if you left with this and your smaller fighters, that's kind of looks like what they're going for now. Yeah. This goes out and this plays that temporary mothership role while the Kraken is your literal home base.
And if you're taking the idea of that original assault ship and you want to go with that, and if CIG do want to run with that, then that docking column module does make sense. And certainly if these small Buccaneers can actually dock.
Oh, you mean cutlasses? Yeah, if cutlasses can connect to it, that works
definitely
as well.
Cutlasses, but if the Buccaneers could connect to those docking collars, even better.
I will actually point out though, it does have one docking collar. So technically you could still connect one cutlass at a time and go in, use the barracks module, change your weapons, get checked out by the doctor, all that stuff. So you can still do that. You just can't do 4 at once. So I think originally when the Kraken didn't exist, it would have made a lot more sense. Now, not so much.
And I think that's why we think that one's just not the one that's least likely to make it.
Agreed. Okay, moving on to the front modules. Now, some of these are very similar. So obviously you've got the default cargo variant, and there's a tractor beam variant, which would also work well with things like the chop shop module and pulling cargo in and stuff like that. They also mentioned ones like launch bays and stuff like that they had on the previous one. But the really interesting one for me were the last 2 that we've got here in the list, Algared. And I'm going to mention this one here because I found that this was absolutely groundbreaking when we found this in the video. And I stopped it and I said, Algared, did you hear that? And he's like, what? So Algared missed it as well. But
no, I got the idea, but I didn't think it was as spectacular as you did. But it is.
So 2 years before they ever mentioned Titan suits, they mentioned EVA exosuits for salvage, cargo, and repair. And I thought that was massive news to go back and find because that literally shows that they're probably going to have Titan suits for salvage, cargo, and repair. And it led on me to think of many other ships like the Reclaimer that has a cutter. There's a little ship called the Cutter for the Reclaimer that we've never seen.
And we've even speculated that's kind of like Ripley's exosuit with a flame cutting tool.
We have. speculated it to be an exosuit or a Titan suit. So you can actually see all those things like the power loader and stuff like that. And then there's another episode that we're working on is looking into Titan suits specifically. So we'll probably talk about that more further. But the last one, Algared, do you want to talk about the last one?
Let me see if I can find it on the notes.
Do you want me to just
the tool one with so it's got a tool. The front module could have tools for repair.
Yeah, so like in the Caracal, it has a little repair bay to repair components and stuff, which makes a lot of sense with this ship having so many components.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things that was really important was that with that exosuity type thing was the idea. It was kind of like the if I remember, he described it as kind of that mini submersible, which divers would use. The self-powered one. I could imagine get James Bond movies where you got them flying along with that little sub and
sending it out to repair the outside of the ship itself.
Well, the way that is you've got your pilot. He's still there, but it's kind of pulling him along, and it gives him a lot more maneuverability and a lot more. Gives him a lot more of it.
A cheap man's drone, if you will, in a lot of ways. So you're in the drone, essentially, yeah. So I think those alone add a lot more, like just the modules, but now we've got some other things that they talked about as well, and I think these are probably less likely to go forward, but I still want to bring them up because they were in the video. So I'll let you do the first one, Algared.
So the first one they talked about was attachments. And that was the idea of having things be able to attach to the outside of a ship.
Yeah, so if you actually look in this photo off to our left here, you can actually see like little runs and ladders and little bars and stuff. And so we've actually kind of speculated maybe the original design was to have things literally that could attach. They didn't say what they were, they just mentioned them. Things that are like little modules and attachments that can attach to the outside of ships. Whether that could be similar to what they've mentioned on the Hull series, where it's like guns and stuff, or more cargo crates, we just don't know. And it probably may never eventuate now because of all the other ships we have in the game. And this ship already had way too much more over other ships. I don't know. Do you see it eventuating, Algared? I don't.
I'm with you. I think already as it is, if you take all the things they said, it was too good to be true. It was a bit like, the original 890. Everyone's, oh wow. And you it's too good to be true. Too good to be true. And then
we all know how that one turned out. Yeah.
It's the same with the BMM. Sometimes, if a ship sounds too good to be true, or the Phoenix sounds too good to be true, chances are it is.
So we've had this mentioned for the Cutlass, and that's the atmospheric shields that are on things like the Talon are coming to the Cutlass, so you can go in and out without the air evacuating. And they mentioned that for the front module for this ship, but there's no reason that couldn't also be on the sides of this ship as well. But I do put a very big question mark on that. Because as long as you keep the doors closed between each section, it really won't matter that much. You can just fill it with air or whatever.
Yeah.
But that would be a really nice upgrade or module that you could possibly buy that is then added to the ship. And that, as I said, something that they've mentioned.
Well, given the fact that each of the modules have their own power plant and life support system type idea, you could it could be something they do have on the modules that. Because it's not drawing from the ship's power, it's drawing from the module's power. And that would also mean, you knock out the shields on one, well, so what? I just keep it all shut. But
it also makes it more expensive, so you have to buy every single one. And so maybe there is one you just use for cargo, but or do you hot swap the modules? Like you can see the layers that has there. I think we'll go back to where I kind of got you to turn off the tangent, because we're going down the tangent of the Endeavour. So as we wrap up here, let's talk about this ship being like a mini Endeavour, and there are a few, as we said, mentioned a few others like the Retaliator and the Warden. Those modular ships specifically. So I'll just open it up now. So you tell me your thoughts on how you think this relates to the Endeavour.
Relates to the Endeavour because it basically is a mini Endeavour. It's got so much versatility in terms of if they do the modules.
Yep.
The fact that you can turn it into a med ship, the fact that you could turn it into a salvage ship, the fact that you could turn it into an assault ship, the fact that you could turn it into a merchant ship. the fact that you could turn it into a shop. Now, people talk about, I don't want the BMM, it's a mall.
Yeah.
You could have this set up with four shops.
For sure. 100%.
You know?
This could be... That's actually more than the Bandit Merchantman too. But you'd also need cargo. So, but if you could have 3 shops and then 2 modules of cargo, that could be really interesting.
The only thing this doesn't do in terms of the modules that the Endeavour does is science.
Oh, 100%.
The Endeavour does science in droves, and this does...
I would say this is more economical. So where medical is science-based, but it's more economic-based than some of the other science professions. So I think this is, while it does have the attack aesthetics of the boarding action, that is probably a softer than direct combat approach, where you're going to get some of the modules from the Retaliator, like the torpedoes and stuff.
And I think the hospital or the med bay section of this is more a med bay rather than a full hospital.
Agreed.
So you imagine it's a med bay more like the Carrick's med bay.
So to sum this up in an agreeable way, if the Retaliators and the Warden are the attack module craft, and the Endeavour is the sciencey type craft, this is kind of the hybrid of the two of those, where you get a bit of the economics
utilitarian
and a bit of the attack, and it plays that middle ground. And I think, again, giving it that versatility, it's got versatility of the modular versatility variety, so that makes it even more versatile than almost anything else. And I think that's why I've held onto this ship as long as I have, because I think it's got more potential than almost any other ship. But because they just haven't released those modules or said these are the modules that are coming, I put a big fat question mark on it. Because if it doesn't get those modules,
you actually lowered it straight down. You said, "Well, I'm going to value this as if it doesn't have a module. I'm keeping it just in case." But because it doesn't have a modules, it's a mid-level ship.
And looking back on that in hindsight, Algared, I think it definitely is still, even if it's just the cargo variant as it is right now, I still should have put it higher than the Hercules, in my opinion. But sorry, go ahead.
Well, I think it should have been certainly a mid-high ship, but
definitely.
The other thing that makes this so much like an Endeavour or a mini Endeavour is a command module. The command module can operate exactly the same way that the cab on the Endeavour does.
Not exactly, because you can't go into the sun. You can't go into the sun. But yeah, I get you. I get what you mean. I think in a lot of ways, in a lot of ways it's better because it's smaller too. So it's cheaper to run to go down to a planet where you're still akin to taking a constellation type of, well, whatever size it turns out to be, down to the planet. It'd be akin to taking the entire Caterpillar down in an Endeavour, right? In this, it's like taking down a Hercules. Not a Hercules, sorry, a Herald. God, man, I'm terrible with the ship names that same with the same letter. I'm really bad at it.
Yeah, and so that is a key thing for me, the fact that you've got that cab that can detach. And hopefully, that'll be one of those things I think comes with ship docking. It'll be one of the next ones, I hope. We'll get the P-52-72 and...
It is, I'm just double checking my own brain, but it is the only Drake ship I own. So that kind of tells you how high I am. And I will add, I do or would like to at some point get a Kraken. But for me, it is the most promising of the Drake ships. Now, I know people might find that controversial. I know there's people that don't think it is what I... Oh, also, I'll also chuck this in there, and you can correct me if you think I'm wrong, but I call this a daily driver. Do you call this... Yeah,
it can be, because
and because of its...
Go on.
I was going to say, because of the modules, it makes it probably the most versatile daily driver. It's not the best daily driver, I will give you that.
No.
As in ship performance, like it lands slower, it doesn't attack as well as some of the other ships. But like, again, you put something like a Star-Runner up against it, the Star-Runner is not meant to attack as much as it does either. So this ship may get an upgrade in the future. I don't know.
Well, you put a Carrack up against it as a solo daily driver. This beats a Carrack because the pilot's got guns.
Yep.
I really like the Carrack. I do fly it solo, but if I get into trouble, I bug out because I can't fight.
And I think
Um,
that's probably where this ship's weakness would be, having one less shield than the Hercules and stuff like that. Only having one lone shield, it is a lot more susceptible, and it does need the escorts, but it also helps those escorts. So much like the Kraken, where the Kraken itself doesn't have a lot of attack ability, but it does support so many more ships, and that's what makes it strong. It doesn't need to be strong because it's surrounded by ships that are strong. This would be very similar. It would be supporting the attack ships around it.
And I think that was a part of the original design.
Yeah.
You know, and you look at some of the original stories, it wasn't a assault ship attacking a passenger liner. A bit like the original stories that we saw for the Kraken was, it was being, you know, a privateer was being used.
Did you just call it a crap Kraken?
No, the Kraken.
I swear I heard you said. I swear I heard you say crap Kraken. All right, fair enough.
Well, if I did, it was an obvious Freudian slip, showing my distaste of Drake.
Biased. Look, I think we'll wrap it up there. You can see, like, even though Algared and I have different ship tastes across the board, we both agree that this is an underrated ship, or an unfound gem, so to speak. And I'd like to know in the comments below, what are your thoughts? And I know there are a lot of question marks, right? But if even only half of what we've said today comes to pass, or even if it just stays at a cargo ship, do you now look at the Caterpillar in a slightly different light? And I would like you guys to go watch those videos that I'll link in the description, because it really opened our eyes. And I think with a lot of these ships that we're now starting to scrutinize, we're going back to those much older videos and just trying to find stuff that has just been completely forgotten, or never even realized, much like when the exosuits that they now call Titan suits. So
yeah,
let's know your thoughts below.
And, you know, I know we watched those videos when they came out 2 or 3 times, and it's just been, you know,
Forgotten.
7, 8 years, but we just forget. It's just nature of humanity. So,
definitely. All right. I'll wrap up with hashtag Jaden in the comments if you're subscribed, and leave a comment, hashtag Jaden, for a chance to win a Super Hornet and F7 upgrade, since Eric Lanza has passed away and it's looking for a new home. All right.
If you like what we do, join us on Discord. If you want to go the extra yard, become a Patreon. The info will be in the links below.
Like, subscribe, all that jazz.
Yeah, all of that crap.
He's been Algared. I've been Execute, and we'll catch you next
we're out of here.
one.
Take care.